This is the Blockchain 360 podcast. Blockchain 360 is a podcast of interviews and discussions about the current state and direction of blockchain. Thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time listening, then thank you for coming. The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at our website, blockchain360.co. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter at Blockchain360. All links discussed today are included in the show notes.
Hi, my name is Brian Nilsson, and I'm your host here on Blockchain 360, where we talk about everything blockchain. My guest today is Cory Mock, and he is a representative in the state legislature in North Dakota.
That's right.
But he's a little more unique than that. So tell me, first of all, you're from North Dakota.
Right.
Okay. What did you do before you became a representative in your state assembly?
So,
what is your background?
Right, my
That's really
background,
what it is.
right. So we're a part-time citizen legislature, so we actually still have full-time jobs.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I've been in the legislature now for 10 years. I was elected in 2008.
Wow.
So when you say unique, I imagine you weren't referring at all about me being under the age of, well, pick a number. I mean, I'm in my 30s, so I'm not the oldest member of the assembly. Even if you know nothing about it, you know that's not the case.
That's true.
But nonprofit management is my background,
Cool.
and I work with businesses. I'm chair of the IT committee in the state of North Dakota. I also serve as the minority leader in the State House of Representatives.
Okay, so you are in a very unique position, and you're trying to transform North Dakota with the use of blockchain. So what are the initiatives that you're actually working on?
Yeah, so right now we're still in the sketching out opportunities.
Investigative side.
Like we're, I've been fascinated with what other states, Wyoming, for example, has
Right
passed
next
some
door,
legislation.
right.
Yeah, not far off. There it's a small.
Actually, not quite.
Yeah, not quite. It's,
yeah.
it's all relative. It's next door if it needs to be.
Geographically,
right.
it's close by.
Exactly right. It's a day of commute. So we've seen what they've done with fintech and opening that up and separating security and utility tokens. And I've been fascinated by it, and on one hand, I'm wondering, can another similarly sized state like North Dakota expand the great blockchain public-private experiment by taking a different approach to it? So instead of doing exactly what a state like Wyoming did, could a state like North Dakota consider doing? Working with our notary publics, or having smarter contracts, or and not necessarily replacing, but enabling those programs, so that should a county or an entity want to have it, that it's permissible, that it could serve in place of a notarized document.
Right, an alternative means of actually achieving some social good.
Right, exactly. We also. Using the ledger concept is just a fundamental way of verifying identities. And are there things that the state or subdivisions, cities, counties do, things that they do that could be improved or enhanced by blockchain? So, this has been a very interesting conference. There's some incredible people. There's the ideas that I came with are. I thought they were the best ideas ever, and they've just grown. My list is.
Yeah, there's water to it.
I need to buy another notebook after this.
Well, what are some of the things you brought? I mean, what were the ideas that you thought were quite innovative? And so, because you've been on some panels here,
right?
So, share with the listeners some of the things that you've been thinking about.
Sure. So we have a new governor who has a tech background. Governor Doug Burgum was the founder of Great Plains Software, sold to Microsoft, and now he, a businessman turned politician, moderate Republican governor of North Dakota. And his appointee as CIO, Chief Information Officer, is a guy who has also incredible tech background.
Right.
He was with Mayo Clinics out of Rochester, Minnesota, ran a large system, and is now running a state system. Both of them are fairly innovative in their approaches. Visiting with our CIO just even a couple days ago, I asked him, I said, Sean, what would you do? If we could do anything, what would we do? And he said, well, one thing that he would like to see a state like North Dakota do is look at, potentially create the first blockchain-enabled voting system, or election system that is
Well, how many people
that is
live
approved.
in North Dakota?
So we're about 750,000 people,
So it's
roughly.
a perfect size.
Right. It's a great opportunity to try little things. Elections is a very important system, and that one might be a very difficult first endeavor. But there are components of an elections-based system that could be improved or enhanced using blockchain technology.
Right.
Our systems are, we date back to the early '90s, and they had the.
So are these booths, or are they
well,
paper things, or what is it?
So we're still we're a paper ballot primarily. So
Right.
it's usually a single page paper ballot.
Right.
Fill in it's like going back to grade school, filling in the bubbles. When in doubt,
You
I
mean
guess
you didn't adopt the Florida thing where you punch a hole through?
I could just say I'm
Hanging
so
chats?
glad that we avoided that. That if it was a fad, I'm glad we avoided it.
Oh, that's good.
But so we've had that for a long time. The OptiScan, and you fill out the circles, drop them in the scanner, and the votes are tabulated. And the scanning technology has changed a little bit, but essentially it's the same. Now you've got the pre-printed ballots. You fill in the circles, you drop them in. You've got a paper ballot. You've got it digitally counted, and it's
Perfect audit trail.
Exactly right. And I think it's a pretty good system. Can blockchain somehow help with the voter verification? I should also mention.
So that's a digital identification
Exactly
issue.
right.
Yeah, sure.
In North Dakota, and this is where we're unique. This is how I'm so relatable to your listeners, Brian. We, as the big state of North Dakota, all 750,000, we're the only state in the country that does not have voter registration.
Really?
Right.
So you can vote in primaries on either side.
Exactly right. So
Wow, I didn't realize that.
they're technically closed primaries, but you don't need to. So you show up and you get a ballot, and you've got the Republican column, Democratic column, Libertarian column, and as long as you stay within that column, you can vote in anyone you choose. So if you always vote for the Republicans, but there's a contested race on the Democratic side, you can just decide I'm going to vote in the Democratic primary for that primary, and then in the general you can vote for whomever.
Interesting.
So there's no registration. It also, but generally speaking, now we've created a de facto registration. So now voter ID laws, in order to vote in North Dakota, now you have to have a state-issued ID, which is all managed. Driver's license or non-driver's ID,
right, sure.
and that's all managed by our Department of Motor Vehicles.
So that is the digital identity that you're wishing to actually.
So exactly. That is where our central voter file is housed. Your information is in that document, that database, and that's shared with the county. So on election day, when I show up and I show my ID, even if my ID is not, if the address isn't current, let's say I moved and I updated online, my address would still be or my license would still be valid, but the address wouldn't be correct. The system would show which one's the correct one.
Right.
That's the database.
Right,
and
right.
everything needs to be checked against that.
Sure.
Can that be a blockchain identification
Yeah.
system? So those are some of the little things. If you're looking incrementally, can you prove a concept, secure the process, and then show how it can be expanded or scaled to other areas?
So how far are you in this investigative phase, and do you think that you're going to get to the point where you're actually going to trial it and actually do it? I mean, it would seem to me that you're the perfect case size because you're not a small number. Like some countries are 30,000. It's too small.
Right.
700,000 or 750,000. That's a good sample size.
Right.
And then you would also be able to understand the process of actually transforming state identification onto the blockchain and still have it valid for this purpose, for a voting aspect of it. So where are you in that process?
Well, right now...
And do you have support? I mean, so you said that you were the minority leader within the state legislature, and I guess then the governor is a Republican, so you're a Democrat.
Correct.
So how is that all working?
So, well, as far as where I am or where we are in the process,
Yeah.
we are in the visit with podcast hosts at the GBA conference stage of things. I'm guessing the next phase is responding to a bunch of angry listeners who will correct me on everything I got wrong. That'll be the next phase. Then I guess the third phase is bringing the whole idea of blockchain back to our legislature.
All right, so what kind of support do you have?
So right now, the idea, we're still very much in the preliminary, what if stage. This is one of many potential opportunities.
Sure.
And I'm looking at it as, I need to educate a legislative assembly about blockchain in general. So
Now, you made a comment on one of your panels that the problem is that education staff.
That's exactly right.
So share with the visitors what this problem
Well,
is.
in North Dakota, we still have a mainframe. So we still have some agencies and some applications that are running on a mainframe. And I've been in the legislature 10 years. I've been on the IT committee for 10 years. The conversation hasn't changed much. It's the number of applications that are on the mainframe is the only thing that's changed. But we've been talking mainframe migration since I was elected in 2008. And we're closer, but we still have that. We're now talking about cloud-based computing. How do we get away from on-premise computing, data centers in North Dakota, go to cloud-based services, cloud-based applications? We've got thousands of databases. We haven't had a full inventory of all of the databases we have. We need to compile that.
Standard legacy issues.
Exactly right. So, at our next meeting in the end of June, we're gonna have essentially a primer, a tutorial to all of the IT committee members. Again, we're a citizen legislature, so most people are not experts in this. Getting email attachments to open consistently is sometimes a challenge if we're sending out complex files. And that's what most states are like. You're run by citizen legislatures, and you've got citizens that serve in a, they're not necessarily volunteers, but it's a limited basis. They're not experts in the field.
It's a part-time job.
It is, and it's diverse in age. You don't necessarily have staff. We have no staff, so you have to be an expert in everything that ever comes across your desk. And you have to be it quickly. You don't get a lot of lead up time. So we're introducing cloud-based computing. We're doing a presentation. Microsoft is campus in Fargo. We're meeting there, and they'll be talking about cloud-based computing. And then later that day, I'm going to have some folks come in and just introduce to the committee what blockchain is.
Right.
Do a very introductory. I know some people may think of blockchain as just Bitcoin or certain it's what you hear about on the news. Right. It's more than that. And what I'd like to do is if I had a goal for that meeting, it's that everyone walks out of there going, okay, I don't think I get it, but I
understand more.
Exactly.
Right.
I know what it isn't.
Right.
I'm not completely lost.
Right.
So degrees of success. We're making progress, and potentially, if there's a really good low-hanging, non-invasive opportunity, low-hanging fruit, non-invasive opportunity for us to enable or potentially enable blockchain to work in North Dakota public sector. Maybe it's something like allowing for notaries or the notary public system to be to also allow for
Augmented.
a blockchain. Exactly right. To not to replace, but maybe maybe just allow for it.
Right.
Make it permissive. Maybe that's a bill draft we can have prepared before that meeting, give to the committee.
Sure.
We come back in September for our last meeting. We can consider it, and then if it's approved, if the committee wants to do it, it goes to our next session. And if not,
try again.
Well, a person could introduce it on their own. It doesn't end, but it's just a way of getting a bipartisan committee that's working on these issues to have a little more buy-in and say, I can see where this would be a good opportunity. Maybe it's worth pursuing.
Right. Well, I think that blockchain as a technology is really not a partisan issue. It's just like this can benefit all citizens, irrespective of what it is in its implementation, because whether one state chooses their digital identity or a different state chooses on the voting or on social services or whatever it is that they want to do, land registry as an example, it is a nonpartisan technology, which is a fascinating thing. I think that what you're doing is in North Dakota is also very innovative, and that is oftentimes what I'm hearing from other state legislature groups or individuals that are part of state administrations is that it's, for whatever reason, a partisan issue. And I'm like, this is absolutely crazy. And it's great that you guys are actually spearheading this from a nonpartisan approach.
Right.
And you're actually dealing with things that are going to be, from an interstate aspect, very impactful, because if all of a sudden you have, I can just see right now that if you move your digital identities onto the blockchain, well, then why not have your driver's licenses all there? And if any state services are already there. So it's just, you just keep extending what you've already started as that initial basis.
Right. And in fact, the neat part about this is that if North Dakota were to go forward with some kind of a central voter file being on the blockchain, and now, again, we don't have voter registration technically, but other states do. In fact, every other state does.
Right.
So now does that system allow us, if there's someone who votes in North Dakota who moved to us from, say, Minnesota or Virginia, is there a way for our information to communicate with their state so that a person doesn't vote in 2 different states? Maybe they're still registered.
That doesn't happen.
And the one way to know for sure is if you have
It
a
was on a
system that
blockchain.
because
Yeah, I know.
the states don't communicate. So I mean, to the best of my knowledge, a state isn't aware of someone
Voting elsewhere.
or gaining a registration in another
That's
state
true.
that then they're unregistered in their previous state. Could blockchain be the means by which states communicate and that you ensure that people aren't registered in multiple states or multiple jurisdictions?
Or cats.
Or cats, right? Exactly. Yes. Paw print here. Yeah.
So, what caused you to actually say, you know what, this is really what I want to spearhead? I mean, there had to be something that bubbled up within you outside of just maybe the interest in it, and just said, I really want to do something that's transformative.
Well, so I mean, the joke is that being as young as I am, many of your colleagues, again, legislators tend to be older. I mean, and that's just generally. I think our median age is like 65 years old is the average age.
It would be 70, but you screwed it up.
and I should also admit, I am far from the youngest, which seems surprising. We
Really?
actually have quite a few. There's a really strange dynamic that's 20s and early 30s is where you get quite a few. And it's all relative, of course.
Right, of course.
Maybe a dozen or so. And then the 40s and early 50s, it's harder because late 30s, early 40s, early 50s.
Different phases of life.
Exactly. You're in your career, height of your career,
Yeah.
and it's part-time, so it's hard to do. And then as you get older, you're ready to retire. You have a little more flexibility. You're able to, so that's a big reason for it. So joking aside, that's the reason I did it, is just because I'm the young guy in the room. Like, hey kid, you know a thing or two about computers. Type this into the Googles and figure this out.
In the Googles.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that is far from it. Experience in it, very much have an interest. Some close friends that work in tech-based services that I've gotten a chance to learn from. But more importantly, how can we, in jurisdictions, states, cities, we all have tightening budgets. We're all facing. There's always a call
maybe
for
not
doing.
North Dakota. You guys
actually, we're struggling a little bit.
Really?
In fact, we've had the last.
I mean, you guys have had such an energy boom and everything.
We were
surrounded.
We
with
were
that.
the anomaly at every state government
Yeah.
conference for years during the recession. Everyone was talking about how to survive during budget cuts, except in North Dakota. We were oftentimes either a joke or a subheading about like North Dakota need not attend. Fiscal crisis. North Dakotans see at lunch.
No, North Dakota buy us lunch.
Right. Well, right. So those changes, the oil volatility. We've made some tax-based changes, and so we've spent high, we've taxed low, and now it's not as quite sustainable. We've got some trust funds, so that's a challenge. So we're facing some more budget cuts.
Sure.
And you always want to be more efficient. You should always strive for greater efficiency.
Absolutely.
Whether you're poor or wealthy in your state's economy, it doesn't matter. You should always be looking to do better. With your resources.
Absolutely.
It's not your money. It's the taxpayers' dollars. Let's do it. Let's use it more effectively, more efficiently. So that's one. We're facing some pressure. We're trying to do more with less. Can newer technologies help us do that? We know why we need to do it. We need to innovate. We need to be creative. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So, instead of us trying to bring everything that we've got up to the late 20th, early 21st century of technology, which is where a lot of governments look to, proven, established, trusted technologies that are relatively inexpensive because they've been on the market for a while.
Sure.
Could we approach something, or are there little things we can do that are maybe we leapfrog? Maybe we say, instead of going to the last technology or trying to chase the current fad, is there something that we can be a leader in that would be
an early adopter rather than waiting for
as opposed to a laggard?
Right.
That we'll finally replace the rotary phones.
Which is what your state mainframe is.
Exactly right. That one thing is the rotary phone equivalent of modern communication.
So what you should do is you should go into the state legislature and say, okay, we have this big beautiful mainframe, but see this little iPhone? The chip in here is more powerful than that.
And there is actually a pretty common understanding. It's just a matter of getting everything off, and that has apparently taken.
So you keep importing squirrels from New Jersey to keep that thing spinning.
Right, exactly. Squirrels and hamsters.
So there you go.
It's I know that actually the biggest challenge that we're going to run into is for a while, every agency that was on it, we're all pitching in a little bit to maintain it. It's not cheap.
Right.
Well, now as you get more and more of those applications and services off the mainframe, the last one or two that are left on it,
it's death.
It's not cheaper to run with fewer applications. You pay the cost.
Right.
So if you're the last agency that's on it,
So
gosh, your
the
budget's
agencies
in
are going to go
trouble.
like, well, I've already migrated, so I'm not paying.
I don't
that.
have to pay for that.
Right.
So, and that's actually a challenge. What do we do if?
Well, it's that domino effect.
Right. So
at some point, everybody has to have it. This is the cutoff date.
Yeah.
And everyone move.
I mean, I think this a real opportunity, and it's in a way, and again, consider the age. I wasn't serving in the legislature when the internet was still becoming a thing. When everyone was asking, "What is this internet?" I mean, you occasionally hear the conversation, but everyone seems to have a good
Those are
grasp.
the older representatives still have.
And actually, and I know we're not the only state that face this. We just in 2007 was the first year that every legislator had to have a computer for all their bills. Our legislative bill tracking system was electronically created a few years before then. Prior to then, you could choose. You could either have the large bill book that has all the bills, and if an amendment would come in, they'd bring you a copy, the way it used to be. 2007 was the first year they said, I don't care how much you hate that computer. It's an expensive deck of cards in your eyes.
Right.
But everyone needs to be on it. We can't keep maintaining these bill books. It's little things like that will move us forward. I think there's a real opportunity for us to use this technology, explain it, take advantage of it. Prove that government can be innovative and use it. Internet as a technology is not regulated. The results and things that can be done on the internet can be. We want to make sure that our elected officials, policymakers at all levels, have that same understanding.
Exactly.
You don't regulate blockchain. Let it grow, encourage it, but then use whatever regulations you need to have or enabling legislation to permit it to allow that technology to grow. But you provide the guardrails to ensure that the results fit with you, that your integrity is there, that that things are verified, that there's safety measures. You want to maintain public trust. You want the system to work, but let the technology grow around it. And as the token representative of all things, public and governmental. Which I apologize to everybody who works in that sector. You probably could have had 1,000 people could have represented that agency, that whole concept, the institution better than I. But
you're the one here.
I guess, I guess opportunity to those who show up. Decisions are made by those who show up.
That's
so,
right.
No, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about this proactively. That we all understand that it isn't something that needs to be specifically regulated as a technology, but enabled, and what can or should government's role be in that to allow the technology to flourish the way it should.
So I want to thank you for appearing on this version of this episode of
Yeah. This is I think you were right for this version. I'm sure a stark departure of most things.
No. We try to make this as a conversational component, and the reason why we do it is because when you're at a conference like this, or you're out you're having drinks at a party and people have a conversation, a lot of people want to stand around and just listen to the conversation. And that's really the whole purpose of this particular podcast is to allow them to have that access. And they're not going to be wherever I am.
Right.
And fortunately for me, the podcast is wherever I am.
It's lucky how it works out for you that way.
It does work out that way. But, I want to thank you, Cory, for coming on and actually sharing what you're doing for North Dakota, because I think that it's going to be innovators like you, and you're really more than a thought leader. You're actually moving a state to adopt something that is going to be hard for them. And it's going to be harder for the larger states because it's just the more complex, that they're dealing with. But I think it's great.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for the kind words. And one thing I would just say, it's if there's one lesson I could have that Cory today, could go back and tell past Cory when he was first elected is, you may have a really great idea, and it may even seem relatively simple, and you come in and you introduce it and say, this is what we should do.
Sure.
tempering your expectations and working backwards. I mean, making sure that you have buy-in, that you're approaching it systematically, because I mean, we have a lot of really good ideas that come up in the legislature in North Dakota, just as there are in most states. But because it wasn't necessarily done, we like to come up with the result and push for perfect, but we forget that sometimes you need to slowly work into it.
Right.
And you can do a lot if you can bring people together, get them to share that concept, test it out. I don't think government does enough of testing unique ideas in little isolated, low risk scenarios.
Right.
You know, can we do this more so that the next time that bigger idea comes up, or
you're building upon it.
Exactly right. That you're creating a larger foundation for greater success. It
Agreed.
takes patience. And again, maybe I'm now the token millennial in the governmental world. Instant gratification is the enemy for a lot of us. We want to change it. We want to do something today. We want the result today. You know,
Right.
It's exactly right. I want the result now.
It should have changed yesterday, so I have the result today.
Exactly right. And unfortunately, we live in a world where people demand instant gratification, right or wrong.
Right.
That's the world we live in. It takes patience to truly see the fruit of our labors, and that's where I want us to get us started early, so we can, find out what works, maybe see what doesn't, build upon our own successes, but also share that information with others so that they can move forward as well.
Perfect.
Contact your legislators, your city council members. This
is a public announcement.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, reach out, get engaged. If you have an idea, find those that are in your area. Go to your state, city's legislative, city council, government page. If someone really has a true interest and wants to know more about North Dakota, feel free to reach out to me. I should also, as a caveat, as a citizen legislature, and I'm sure a lot of states are like this too, we have no staff, so every email comes directly to me.
So be polite.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm sure that probably just drives up the incentive, to be honest. But more importantly, I look forward to hearing from folks. If there are ideas or things we could do, I'd love to do it. One guy, just one person, but I would love to refer and provide resources or even refer it on to others who might have better answers than I, as I can. So
perfect.
Thanks, Brian, for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I hope to join you again. This was fun today.
We'll absolutely do it. Well, let's schedule something for like a year from now.
Yeah, well, actually, if you want, I'll invite you up to North Dakota. We could do an on-site podcast in North Dakota in January, if you'd like. The weather is warm in North Dakota in January. But if you
I grew up where there was snow, so it doesn't scare me.
Yeah, it's not the snow that people complain about. But it would be a lot of fun to keep the conversation alive.
Absolutely.
Hear from listeners, subscribers, see how what we can do differently, and then share our results as often as we can.
Perfect.
Take care.
Yep.
The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly. Have a question? Want us to interview someone specific? Wish to hear about a particular topic? Let us know. You can email podcast@blockchain360.co or tweet us on Twitter @blockchain360 or at our website blockchain360.co.